We got married yesterday, Frank. It was just for a few special people. The phone was cold against my ear. No, Dad. Just Frank. The name landed like a deadbolt sliding shut. Final. But why? I managed to get out half a word. We just wanted something small. Intimate. You understand. Madison's voice was sweet as pancake syrup, thick and sticky, glazing over the rejection. Then, a click. The line went dead. The call had lasted 11 seconds. I'm guessing 99% of you hearing this will just sigh and scroll on without hitting like or subscribe. It only takes a second. What time is it where you are, and where are you listening from? Saturday morning started like any other. I got up early and fired up the old lawnmower that's been with me for over a decade. The engine roared to life, and the rich smell of fresh cut grass mixed with the last of the morning dew. I pushed it in straight lines, the blades leaving clean green stripes, neat as a seamstress's stitch. When I was done, I coiled the hose, rinsed my hands, and poured myself a black coffee. No cream, no sugar. At 62, you don't go changing your tastes. On the kitchen counter, a bottle of Blanton's bourbon sat in its handsome box, its amber liquid glowing. I'd bought it last week, nearly $300 with tax. More of a splurge than usual, but a man only gets to see his son married once. I'd even handwritten a small white card to Jake for raising a glass to the moments that matter. I washed my mug, my hand instinctively brushing over a small scratch on the marble countertop. I knew every vein in it. My entire retirement bonus had paid for this new kitchen. I remember Madison, my future daughter-in-law, placing her slender hand on the counter, her eyes gleaming. It's perfect. Finally, a space of our own. Our own. It sounded like a door closing. My phone buzzed. A text from Jake. 11 words. We had a small ceremony yesterday. Just for special people. I read it again. And a third time, as if the words might change if I was patient enough. Yesterday, special people. I typed congratulations and deleted it. I typed proud of you, son, and deleted that too. The word proud suddenly felt like a lie. I placed the phone face down and looked at the bourbon glinting in the light. It looked like someone all dressed up with nowhere to go. I knew the unwritten rules of American life. You give a gift, you get an invitation, you're in the picture. Simple, clean, polite. But I wasn't there. I made myself a cold sandwich. And then I made the classic mistake of a lonely man. I opened Facebook. And there it was, Madison in a white dress that swallowed the room. Jake beside her, his tie straighter than I'd ever seen it. Madison's parents stood shoulder to shoulder with them, their proud smiles looking well rehearsed. I even recognized a few of the PTA moms from a fundraiser where I'd volunteered to hand string lights. The pastor from the church Madison rarely attended was there too. Everyone was beaming. A video started playing, the clinking of glasses. Then Jake's voice, loud and clear. To self-made men. Or he popped the wooden stopper from the bottle of bourbon, my bottle, and poured a glass for every other man in the room. He never once looked my way. The next photo was of Madison, her manicured hand resting on the familiar marble of the kitchen counter. The caption, finally, a space of our own. I shut off the phone. The silence in the house was thick as tar. Not a peaceful quiet, but the kind that sucks the air out of your lungs and leaves a vacuum behind. I tucked the bourbon into a corner cabinet behind a jar of spaghetti sauce I'd never used. Standing by the window, I saw my neighbor, Mrs. Gable, peek through her curtains. She always said she was just letting the light in, but I knew she was collecting gossip. To her, this was probably a perfect wedding. I knew it was just a well-staged play, and I wasn't even invited to be in the audience. Later that afternoon, I drove to the hardware store for a few light bulbs, just for an excuse to get out. In the parking lot, the neighbor's daughter grinned at me. I saw the pictures. So sweet. My mom says, you are best at signing the checks though. She let out a high-pitched laugh, then faltered when she saw I wasn't smiling back. A silence fell over us. Even her friends, climbing into a Subaru, suddenly found their own shoes fascinating. Just kidding, she mumbled. I know, I said, my voice as flat as a board. Driving home, I turned off the radio. On my porch, the smell of barbecue drifted over from across the street. The laughter from their yard was a little too loud, a little too forced, like wallpaper slapped over a crack in the foundation. I gave a vague wave, like a politician who's lost the election but hasn't broken the habit of waving. Back in the kitchen, I pulled open a drawer and took out the folder of renovation receipt. The numbers at the bottom of the page were the kind of numbers guys like me, who grew up with nothing, never say out loud. I traced my signature with my finger. The day I signed it, my hand had been steady, full of hope. I didn't need the list, the high-end blender, the patio furniture I'd picked up myself because delivery was too slow. They were all exhibits in a case I was just now building. I stopped in front of the old wedding album from my own marriage. There I was, young, tied, crooked, my eyes shining with a kind of disbelief at my own luck. The cake was lopsided, and the flowers were just flowers, not a statement piece. My own father had said just 3 words to me. "I'm proud, son." It was enough. It was a world away from today, where everything needed an audience and a hashtag. Madison's hugs were always light, performative, meant for the neighbors to see. And Jake, my son, lived his life like there was always an invisible camera on him. I washed a clean plate, dried it, and put it away. Then I took it out again, a ritual to pretend I was making dinner. I rested both hands on the cold marble. The silence in the kitchen felt solid. I took a deep breath, and for the first time, a thought broke through. This isn't my fault. Something is wrong here. This isn't a family. It's a performance. Just then, my phone buzzed with a new voicemail. Madison's number. I didn't answer. I let it go to the machine, then listened. "Hey Frank, it's been a whirlwind. Listen, about the rent money." Her voice was syrupy, sweet, pausing just long enough for the implication to land. I set the phone down on the counter, not gently. In the cabinet, the bottle of bourbon sat in its corner, the darkness cradling it. I turned off the kitchen light. The last of the glow faded from the marble. "Just for the special people," I whispered. And I went to find a pen. The phone rang while I was on the porch, my coffee still steaming. The name on the screen, Madison. I let it ring 4 times. My neighbor, Mrs. Gable, peeked through her curtains again, as if she were counting the rings. I hit accept. "Frank, good morning." Madison's voice was sweet, like syrup on a pancake, a little too thick, a little too fake. "We just got back from our honeymoon. It's been such a whirlwind, so exhausting. Oh, and just a little thing, this month's rent. I think you forgot to send it?" I looked out at the driveway. The red maple leaves covered it like a pile of unpaid bills. "The rent?" I repeated, my voice as flat as a tabletop. "Yes, it's just a small thing. Jake's tied up in an investment, a bit of a cash flow issue. I'm sure you just forgot, like hitting the wrong button. A quick Venmo or Zelle would do it. You still have it on autopay, right?" Her voice dipped, adding a slight tremor, as if for some invisible audience. I knew that technique all too well. The calculated pause, the measured sigh. In my inbox, the transfer logs were still there. Last month, the month before, and the one before that. The memo was always the same. Rent, the number was always the same. The routine was always the same. Ask, then push, then expect. I took a slow, deep breath. "I only help the special people," I said, my voice even. A silence immediately swallowed the line. I could almost picture Madison sitting up straighter, her smile cracking like glass. A drop of syrup falling from the pancake, no longer sweet. "What's that supposed to mean?" she asked, her voice fractured. "I think," I replied, each word landing like a stone in still water, "you understand." I didn't explain further. I let the empty space do the work. On the other end, a sharp intake of breath, then an attempt to regain control. Her tone shifted, still sweet but laced with salt. "You're probably just lonely. Older people sometimes need help. We could discuss this over a family dinner with Jake. Are you finished?" A pause. Then thin as a thread. "I'll have Jake call you." I hung up. Instantly, the phone buzzed again. Jake. I let it ring until it went to voicemail. A notification popped up. "Dad, pick up. We need to talk." I placed the phone face down on the table. A small gesture, but it felt like stamping a document. From now on, the rules have changed. I opened the fridge, took out a bottle of water, and poured it into a glass. I set it next to the pile of unopened mail. Insurance ads, pizza flyers, a gas bill. They sat there, more real than any talk of special people. As the coffee maker dripped out a fresh cup, I opened my laptop. I created a new Excel file. I named it Ledger XLSX. My fingers typed out each line. Kitchen countertop, $18,45. Patio set $2.2. Townhouse down payment, $60,000. The list went on, number after number. Each cell was a clean cut, revealing the truth behind the wall that had been painted over with the word perfect. I remembered their honeymoon in Hawaii. Jake had sent me a photo of a cocktail on the sand. Madison wore her new ring, a coconut in her hands. No one mentioned that the plane tickets had come from my account. I remember Madison's soft, grateful sigh as she ran her hand over the new marble countertop. No one mentioned that I'd signed the check with a hand that ached from arthritis. Every memory was now just a line item in a spreadsheet. Cold, precise, stripped of sentiment. I saved the file. At the very top, I typed one more line. Let's count the years I paid. The phone buzzed again. A text from Madison. Frank, I think there's been a misunderstanding. We're family. We need each other. I didn't reply. Outside the window, Mrs. Gable was watering her plants. She shot a deliberate glance my way, then pretended to fuss with the flower pot. I knew she'd see me ignore Jake's call and Madison's text, and I knew that tonight, at the neighborhood barbecue, the story would begin with, well, old Frank, he's changed. Good. It was time for the community to see a different script. I silenced the ringer and left the phone face down. The bourbon was still in the cabinet, its reflection a dim glow. But I no longer saw it as the symbol of a missed party. It was just an unopened bottle, waiting for a truly special occasion, one of my own. I took a breath, and my lungs felt wider. For the first time in years, I didn't feel the need to yell, or plead, or explain. One sentence, spoken calmly. I helped the special people. It was enough. The silence returned. But this time, it was clean and spacious, like a newly swept room. I sat down, sipped my coffee, and tapped my fingers on the wooden table. And in my head, the numbers continued to fall into line, row after row. I'm guessing 99% of you hearing this will just sigh and scroll on without hitting like or subscribe. It only takes a second. What time is it where you are? And where are you listening from? The afternoon was as flat as an unprinted bank statement. I opened my laptop and saw my own faint reflection in the screen, less emotional, tidier. From the row of provider, I pulled up a chair and moved to the row of auditor. I created Ledger XLSX. The first row, I set up the columns: month, category, payee, method, memo, reference number, amount. The principle was simple. What you can measure, you can control. I dragged two files to my desktop: Chase, STMT, 36mo, PDF, and Credit Union Transactions, CSV. I imported the CSV. The data flooded in. Date, time, payee. I filtered by name: Jake Dalton, Madison Brooks, Townhouse HOA, Utilities, Madison. The recurring memos were like tombstones in a row. Rent again, utilities again, honeymoon flights. Every cell was a confession. I manually entered the off-the-books items, the kinds of things men of my generation still like to pay for by check or card because it's just easier. Kitchen countertop, 18,45 dollar check, Roti 106, Madison, patio set, $2,2 Visa Home Depot. AC repair, $600, Zellref Silhouette meal, 2,4 car payment help 2,5 Zellref ZL 7,743. Jake, medical copay $800, debit ER visit. Groceries dividido por utilities, $200, dividido por Venmo. A separate, gray shaded entry, business loan cosign app ID, JL1729, pre-approval email 3/15. I added a note in bold red, will withdraw signature 9/23. I opened the second sheet, receipts. I pasted in screenshots from Venmo, 8 over $1,500. Rent at Jake DVN 2218. 5 over $1,500. Rent again at Madison B VN 2074. 12 over $2,300. Xmas Groceries VN 1890. I numbered them R1 through R29 with annotations. Back on the main sheet, I moved the cursor to the bottom of the mount column and typed equals SUF2 F200. Enter. The number materialized cold as metal, $33,400. I leaned back in my chair. 3 years, 36 months, a steady drain, a new crack every month. The total wasn't just a number, every digit was a bleeding crack. And that final sum was a single sober cut. I added a row. Note to self, part of this is on you. You taught them your bank was always open. I didn't like the sentence, but I needed it to reclaim the right to end it. My phone buzzed. A rain notification pinged. Motion detected in front yard. I opened the live view. A silver sedan was parked at the curb, its front corner aimed at my house. The angle of the sun bleached the license plate white, but I knew the silhouette behind the wheel. Jake didn't get out. He just sat there, hands on the wheel, like a man waiting for the gas pump to click off. I closed the live view and returned to the spreadsheet. New sheet. Monthly breakdown. I grouped the items. Rent assist, $500 x 24 equals $12,000. Utilities divided by groceries, $200 x 36 equals $7,200. I highlighted a section yellow. Emergency. $1,900 in Q2 of last year. I wrote a note. So-called emergencies have become cyclical. When something repeats, it's no longer a surprise, it's a plan. I exported a summary PDF, a clean one-page summary with neat columns and straight lines. I put it in a folder named Binder, along with receipts, statements, and cosign. It was just a stack of papers, but it felt like the low stone wall I'd built at the edge of the yard to keep the weeds from creeping in. The phone rang. Jake calling. I watched it ring until it fell silent. A text immediately followed. Dad, pick up. We need to talk. I left it. Not answering was a concrete step toward my own adulthood. I needed to get out of this kitchen before the marble turned back into a stage. I walked to the VFW hall down the street. The beer signs on the wall were faded. The TV showed a baseball game with the sound off. Earl, a veteran a few rainy seasons older than me, gave me a nod and pushed a bottle of Budweiser my way. Haven't seen you in a while, he said, his eyes on the screen. I've been busy balancing the books, I replied. Money? Yeah. Turns out I was paying for a peace of mind I never received. Earl snorted and took a sip. A man pays for peace and quiet, he said, only to find out one day he was just renting it by the month. Two guys at the table behind us nodded slightly, their eyes fixed on their own shoes. The truth makes men look down not from shame, but because it has weight. We sat in comfortable silence, watching the Yankees miss an easy play. I guess everyone misses something. They missed the ball, I missed the wedding. On the walk home, the setting sun cut long, diagonal shadows through the trees, like a gentle blade slicing the day thin. I opened the door and didn't turn on the lights right away. The smell of wood, paper, and old coffee was still there. I opened the window and let the cool air drift in. The kitchen was no longer a crime scene. For now, at least, it was just a place to breathe. I organized the binder. Tab A statements, Chase, Stem T, 36 Mo, PDF, Credit Union, Transactions, CSV. Tab B receipts are VNs are Div Desmond Devigny. Tab C, Home Improvements, Countertop, Invoice, Hazelnezer, OFR6, Patio, Visa Statement. Tab D, Cosign JL1729, Pre-approval email, Plan to withdraw 9/23. The objects had become witnesses. The language of paperwork spoke for me. No arguments, no drama, no special people. A new text from Madison. Frank, I think you're misunderstanding. Let's not make a big deal of this. That's what family is for. I read the word family and felt nothing. Family doesn't treat rent assist like a 36-month installment plan. Rim pinged again. The same silver sedan. The window rolled down an inch, then back up a gesture, like a snake flicking its tongue to test the air. They were gauging whether I would soften, like I always did. No, I closed the live view and shut the window. A strange feeling surfaced. Relief. Not triumph, not anger. Just the quiet relief that comes from putting the numbers in their proper columns. When the truth stands up straight, the lies have to bend. I reopened the ledger, XLSX, and bolded the final row. Total $33,400, 36 months. Beneath it, I typed a new line so I wouldn't forget. Tomorrow, I go to the credit union. I saved the file and heard the small click the period at the end of complete sentence. I shut down the laptop. I unplugged it from the wall, another clean click. Outside, the street was half dark. The shadow of the silver car merged with the dark mass of the trees. I stood in the kitchen and placed a hand on the marble countertop. It was cold, neutral. It was just stone. I turned off the light. The binder sat on the table like an animal that has been calmly caged, obedient because it belongs to me. Somewhere, the wall clock ticked evenly a new rhythm, one that no longer matched the first of the month bank transfers. I opened the curtains just a crack, took a long breath, and closed them again. Tomorrow, there will be another click, this one, from across the counter at the credit union when I officially cut the cord. In the morning, I drove to the credit union in silence. The paper coffee cup was still warm in the cup holder. I didn't think of it as a big deal, just paperwork. But every signature I was about to put to paper would change the atmosphere in this house. The credit union lobby had the faint smell of disinfectant, printer ink, and new plastic cards. The sign at the member services counter read, "Appointments only." I slid the binder across the counter and tapped it lightly. I want to cancel all automatic transfers. Mr. Moore, a manager with salt and pepper hair and thin-rimmed glasses, nodded. His screen lit up, displaying the recurring payments. Auto rent assist at Jake D, $500, first of each month. Utilities top up at Madison B, $200, 15th of each month. HOA fee assist, HOA millage, $150, quarterly. Cancel them all, I said. He typed in the commands and the printer whirred. A form, CU cancel number 0923, slid out. The ink still damp. The smell of disinfectant mingled with the fresh ink. A small rectangle of liberation. I continued. I need a new account, private, unlinked to any others, and freeze my credit with Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. All notifications are to be sent to this PO box. I push a slip of paper with the address PO Box 314, Millridge, across the counter. Mr. Moore typed a few more keys and printed another sheet. New member ID, CU-554-09. Your card will arrive in 5 to 7 business days. And the cosign loan? I opened the binder to the page marked JL1729. I want to terminate my guarantee. He exhaled slowly. You can't withdraw from the portion already signed, but I can issue you a loan relief notice, LRN 1729. It will be effective for all future transactions. I nodded. The printer hummed again, spitting out the paper with a bright red stamp. The thud of the stamp sounded like a deadbolt sliding shut in my own mind. Before I left, Mr. Moore gave me his card. If you notice any unusual activity, call me directly. His handshake was brief, firm, and without a wasted word. At noon, I called a locksmith. A young technician arrived within the hour, removing each screw, replacing the Schlage lock on the front door, the medical on the back, and the one on the garage. Brass shavings fell on the doormat, glittering like cheap tinsel. The invoice, locksmith Infashon 142, clearly stated. 3 new locks, 3 new keys. I tested one. Click. A clean sound, like a latch clicking shut on the door in my mind. Next, I upgraded the ring system. An installer adjusted the floodlight cam in the yard and added a stick-up cam aimed at the side door. The report, cam setup number R208, documented every detail, camera angles, brightness settings, Wi-Fi RSSI. I signed electronically, my finger leaving a thin, decisive line. Chekhov's gun had been hung on the wall. In the afternoon, while taking out the trash, I ran into Mrs. Gable from across the street. She was carrying a tray of cookies, her eyes bright as if she just gathered fresh news. Everything all right, Frank? Heard drilling all morning, she asked, placing the tray on my porch railing. Everything's fine, just tightening a few screws. She smiled and slid an HOA flyer my way. The whole block is starting a neighborhood watch initiative. Thought you might need this. Her smile was sweet, but her eyes were a reminder. Everyone is watching. I'm still here, I said, just redrawing the property lines. Good fences make good neighbors. She nodded, then added quietly. Saw Jake's car on the street last night. He seemed confused. Confusion is the first stage of hearing the word no, I replied, my voice flat. She gave a small laugh, picked up her tray, and left the smell of baked butter hanging in the air. I clipped the flyer into my binder, a social receipt, proof that my family story was no longer private. Late afternoon. I sat and reviewed the documents. Console 09223 Consolation Confirmation. New member ID CU Cinch Sude Chinchsech Shi Patronoa. Credit freeze pending. LRN 1729 to be sent via certified mail. Locksmith Invasion 142. Photos of the new locks. Cam setup number R208 installation report. Each paper clipped into the binder was another thread cut. The kitchen smelled of new plastic cards, official ink, and brass hardware. The scent of a newly established border. The phone rang. Jake. I didn't answer. A text followed. Dad, don't be dramatic. We brought someone to help. I walked to the window. Ring pinged with a motion alert. In my driveway, there were 3 cars. Jake's silver sedan, a familiar white SUV, and a strange black Altima. A figure in a gray suit holding a briefcase walked beside Madison. Through the blinds, I saw a hand touch the kitchen window pane, testing the lock. The floodlights snapped on, and their shadows recoiled. I opened the window an inch, took a breath of cold air, and closed it. The binder sat on the table, its papers stacked neatly, witnesses that couldn't lie. Outside, someone said, loud enough for the neighbors to hear, "We brought someone to help." The word help echoed like a kite with its string cut. I turned the new lock on my door. Click. The small sound was enough to let me know the boundary was locked. The quiet of the afternoon was shattered the moment I pushed the door open. The light inside was the same, but the air was different. On the dining table, my papers, bank documents, insurance policies, spending ledgers were spread out like the entrails of a body being dissected without consent. There was no sign of a forced entry. They didn't need one. They had an old key, the one I'd given them out of trust, a mistake now made real by this silent invasion. Jake was already sitting in a chair, his back slightly hunched, like a child waiting for a verdict. But his voice, when he spoke, tried to feign a false maturity. Madison stood by the window, her dress neat, her hair straightened, her smile cold. Between them was a stranger, a man in a gray suit with a briefcase placed squarely on the table. When I walked in, he took off his glasses and gave a polite nod, as if I were merely late for a scheduled meeting. "Frank," he began, his voice smooth and even, "we're here to help. At your age, it's common to get confused with paperwork, to forget payments. A temporary POA is all we're suggesting just to make sure things run smoothly, just until you feel better." A blue bond folder sat on the table. It was thick, glossy, embossed with words, "Durable power of attorney." Looking at it, I knew they had prepared not just the documents, but an entire script. Madison took a step forward, her eyes glistening. "You are so lonely, Frank. We just want to make sure you are taken care of. The bills, the accounts, the papers, it could all be so much easier." Jake nodded in agreement. "That's right, Dad. This is to help, not to take anything away." His voice trembled, but his eyes avoided mine, just like they did when he lied in high school, thinking I hadn't noticed. I let them perform. Every word, every gesture, a well-rehearsed play. Madison spoke as if she were addressing an invisible jury, while the man in the gray suit manipulated with the voice of reason. I placed my keys on the table and looked at them directly. "You think I'm confused, but you're the ones who are mistaken. This is my house. These are my papers. And this is my mind." The room went quiet. The Ring camera in the driveway pinged CCTV clip number 005 reporting motion. I saw the silhouettes of their 3 cars lined up at the curb. An uninvited audience, the lawyer cleared his throat and pushed a silver pen toward me. "Just sign it, Frank. It's temporary. There's no need to turn a small matter into a battle." I tilted my head, my reply soft but clear. I withdrew my signature from Jake's business loan application this morning. The sentence landed like a silent bomb. Jake's head snapped up, his face flushed, his lips a thin line. Madison blinked rapidly. The lawyer froze, his professional mask cracking. He had not anticipated the script being torn up before the first act was even over. I stood up and picked up the blue folder. It felt as heavy as their arrogance. I walked over to the paper shredder. I hit the power button. A roar filled the room, followed by the shriek as the gears devoured each page. I'll show you what the contract I agreed to looks like. The folder turned into a cascade of confetti. That sound was like a tendon snapping something that would never be whole again. "Frank!" Madison screamed, her voice breaking, no longer smooth. Jake slammed his hand on the table, his eyes bloodshot. "You just destroyed yourself. This house, this money, it's all going to be ours eventually. Why are you fighting it?" I looked at him, my gaze no longer trembling as it might have before. "One day, maybe, but not today, and not like this." Conferred. The lawyer regained his composure, closing his briefcase. His voice was cold. "If you refuse to cooperate, we'll petition the court. Guardianship. We only want to ensure your safety." I nodded, not with anger, but with clarity. "Then I'll see you in court." I pulled out my phone and dialed a number I had already saved. Retainer Harper number 001. "Harper, I need to see you tomorrow morning. I'll bring the paperwork." I ended the call and set the phone down on the table, as lightly as placing a seal on a document. Jake shrank back, his eyes red. "People are going to say, you've lost your mind. You're fighting your own family." I pointed to the binder, which I had already gathered and neatly organized. "People can say whatever they want, but these papers don't lie." They had nothing left to say. The door closed behind them, and the sound of their tires grinding on the gravel driveway lingered. I stood in the quiet house, but it no longer felt empty. For the first time in months, I felt like I had reclaimed a piece of lost territory. On the porch, my phone buzzed. A text from my neighbor, Mrs. Gable. "People are talking." Yes, they were. And I knew the next battle wouldn't be fought in the living room. It would be in the courtroom and in the mouths of the town. The quiet of the afternoon was shattered the moment I pushed the door open. The light inside was the same, but the air was different. On the dining table, my papers, bank documents, insurance policies, spending ledgers were spread out like the entrails of a body being dissected without the owner's consent. There was no sign of a forced entry. They didn't need one. They had an old key, the one I'd given them out of trust, a mistake now made real by this silent invasion. Jake was already sitting in a chair, his back slightly hunched, like a child waiting for a verdict. But his voice, when he spoke, feigned a false maturity. Madison stood by the window, her dress neat, her hair straightened, her smile cold. Between them was a stranger, a man in a gray suit with a briefcase placed squarely on the table. When I walked in, he took off his glasses and gave a polite nod, as if I were merely late for a scheduled meeting. "Frank," he began, his voice smooth and even, "we're here to help. At your age, it's common to get confused with paperwork, to forget payments. A temporary POA is all we're suggesting just to make sure things run smoothly, just until you feel better." A blue-bound folder sat on the table. It was thick, glossy, embossed with the words "durable power of attorney." Looking at it, I knew they had prepared not just the documents, but an entire script. To be valid, such a document would need to be signed by me, a person of sound mind, before a notary or two witnesses. Madison took a step forward, her eyes glistening. "You are so lonely, Frank. We just want to make sure you are taken care of. The bills, the accounts, the papers, it could all be so much easier." Jake nodded in agreement. "That's right, Dad. This is to help, not to take anything away." His voice trembled, but his eyes avoided mine, just like they did when he lied in high school, thinking I hadn't noticed. I let them perform. Every word, every gesture, a well-rehearsed play. Madison spoke as if she were addressing an invisible jury, while the man in the gray suit manipulated with the voice of reason. I placed my keys on the table and looked at them directly. "You think I'm confused, but you're the ones who are mistaken. This is my house, these are my papers, and this is my mind." The room went quiet. The Ring camera in the driveway pinged CCTV clip number 005 reporting motion. I saw the silhouettes of their 3 cars lined up at the curb. An uninvited audience. The lawyer cleared his throat and pushed the silver pen toward me. Just sign it, Frank. It's temporary. There's no need to turn a small matter into a battle. I tilted my head, my reply soft but clear. I withdrew my signature from Jake's business loan application this morning. The sentence landed like a silent bomb. Jake's head snapped up, his face flushed, his lips a thin line. Madison blinked rapidly. The lawyer froze, his professional mask cracking. He had not anticipated the script being torn up before the first act was even over. I stood up and picked up the blue folder. It felt as heavy as their arrogance. I walked over to the paper shredder. I hit the power button. A whir filled the room, followed by the shriek as the gears devoured each page. I'll show you what a contract I agreed to looks like. The folder turned into a cascade of confetti. That sound was like a tendon snapping something that would never be whole again. Frank! Madison screamed, her voice breaking, no longer smooth. Jake slammed his hand on the table, his eyes bloodshot. You just destroy yourself. This house, this money, it's all going to be ours eventually. Why are you fighting it? I looked at him, my gaze no longer trembling as it might have before. One day, maybe, but not today, and not like this. Half round. The lawyer regained his composure, closing his briefcase. His voice was cold. If you refuse to cooperate, we will petition the court. Guardianship. We only want to ensure you are safe. I nodded, not with anger, but with clarity. Then I'll see you in court. To establish guardianship, they will have to prove to a judge, with clear and convincing evidence, that I am incapacitated and unable to manage my own affairs. This would require a formal hearing, where I have the right to be represented by my own attorney. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number I had already saved. Retainer Harper, number 001. Harper, I need to see you tomorrow morning. I'll bring the paperwork. I ended the call and set the phone down on the table, as lightly as placing a seal on the document. Jake shrank back, his eyes red. People are going to say you've lost your mind. You're fighting your own family. A flag seat. I pointed to the binder, which I had already gathered and neatly organized. People can say whatever they want, but these papers don't lie. In the contested guardianship case, financial records, medical evidence, and testimony from witnesses are crucial. My meticulous ledger would serve as strong evidence of my competence. They had nothing left to say. The door closed behind them, and the sound of their tires grinding on the gravel driveway lingered. I stood in the quiet house, but it no longer felt empty. For the first time in months, I felt like I had reclaimed a piece of lost territory. On the porch, my phone buzzed. A text from my neighbor, Mrs. Gable. People are talking. Yes, they were. And I knew the next battle wouldn't be fought in the living room. It would be in the courtroom. And on the tongues of the town, I heard the small truck pull into the driveway, followed by a solid knock on the door. The locksmith was right on time. In his hand was a pre-printed invoice. Locksmith in Fashion 142. He asked, Schlage or Medeco? I hesitated for a moment, then chose Medeco. The name itself sounded like a gate that couldn't be breached. He began to dismantle the old locks, the whir of his drill vibrating through the worn wooden frame. Flecks of brass dust glittered as they fell onto the doormat like stars landing on earth. I watched as my own boundaries, which had been blurred for years, were slowly being rebuilt with something solid, tangible, and metallic. When he tested the new lock, the click was clean and final. The sound settled something in my chest, a declaration. From now on, no one will walk in uninvited. I signed the invoice, my hand still trembling slightly. The locksmith gave me a polite, professional smile. You are more secure now, he said. I just nodded. Security, I told myself, wasn't just about the locks on the doors. It was about locking away the soft-heartedness that had kept my checkbook open for so long. In the afternoon, it was the camera technician's turn. He set up a ladder, removed the old porch light, and installed a new ring floodlight. Its bright white light swept across the entire driveway, illuminating every crack in the asphalt. He handed me a report printed in black ink, CCTV install RPT number C57. We tested it together. A ping notification appeared on my phone, the image was sharp and the sound was crisp. Anyone comes near, you'll know immediately, he said. I thanked him. I felt as if I had just signed a silent pact with the modern age. Technology was now a witness that couldn't lie. Late in the afternoon, I walked over to Mrs. Gable's house. She was sitting on her porch, a cup of tea steaming in her hands. She handed me an HOA flyer. People are talking a lot, you know. You did the right thing, changing the locks. In this neighborhood, everyone watches. Her voice was soft, but her eyes were serious. I managed a weak smile. I just want some peace and quiet. She gave a half smile in return. Peace and quiet, sometimes you have to build it with steel, not with sentiment. Her words were like a social mirror. Everyone saw, everyone talked, and everyone was waiting to see how I would hold up. That evening, I went to the VFW. The smells of cheap beer, stale smoke, and old wood clung to my jacket. The familiar faces turned my way, greeting me with quiet nods. I told them a shortened version of my story, leaving out most of the details. One of the old vets let out a dry, humorless laugh, his voice as rough as sandpaper. Sometimes a man pays for his own silence, he said. And we all know, silence never bought anyone peace. His words hit me squarely. I had been signing checks, making transfers, thinking I was buying peace or worse, buying love. But now, in this smoky bar, I realized I had only been throwing money into an empty space. As night fell, I drove to the cemetery. The air was cold, and the dry grass rustled under my feet. I stood before my wife's headstone and placed my hand on the cold stone. I've stopped writing checks to buy something that calls itself love, I whispered. Now I'm buying locks and cameras. Maybe real love doesn't come with an invoice. After I said it, my heart felt lighter, as if she were somewhere nearby, nodding. I left a small flower on the grave and quietly walked away. Back in the kitchen, I was pouring a glass of water when my phone buzzed. Ring alert. I opened the app. On the screen, 3 cars were cruising slowly past my driveway, their headlights sweeping across the front of the house. The camera captured their license plates clearly. Plate snap number 0911, plate snap number 0912, plate snap number 0913. I saved the images immediately and added them to the binder. I also updated the call log. Every detail was another brick in the wall of evidence I was building. Looking at the cold, hard data, I understood that their every move was no longer just being watched by me. It was being archived, ready to be presented to anyone who needed to see it. I leaned back in my chair. The glow of the floodlight outside streamed through the window, highlighting the cracks in the driveway. Inside the house, the new locks, the new cameras, and the words of others' misses. Gable, the old vets were forming a wall of protection around me. But my heart was still heavy. What would they do next? I didn't know. But this time, unlike before, I wasn't afraid. I had evidence, I had community, and I had a newfound clarity within myself. The morning was clear, but a heavy feeling had settled in my chest. When I went to get the mail from the box at the end of the driveway, a thick, sealed envelope sat squarely between the pizza flyers and the local paper. I tore it open at the corner, the edge of the paper giving my fingertip a sharp cut, a stinging reminder. Inside was a court order, TRO temp number 0923, a temporary restraining order. It was just a few lines of type on white paper with a red seal in the corner, but when I set it on the wooden kitchen table, it felt as heavy as a sheet of armor. It affirmed one thing: they were no longer allowed anywhere near my home. Less than an hour later, red and blue lights washed over the facade of the house. 2 police cruisers were parked at an angle on the street, their tires leaving dark marks on the hot asphalt. I stood on the porch, holding the TRO, feeling both protected and exposed. A young officer, his name tag gleaming, walked up the steps. His voice was steady, as if he were reading from a report. PDIN Chash 4471. Mr. Collins, we've been notified of an order requiring a Mr. Jake and Mrs. Madison Collins to vacate the immediate area. Would you like us to escort them from the premises? I just nodded. From an upstairs window, I saw my son, his shoulders squared, his jaw tight. Madison had tears in her eyes, but they darted around as if looking for a camera. The 2 officers led them to their car. The flashing red and blue lights reflected off the walls, turning the house into a stage for some unfinished drama. On the porch across the street, Mrs. Gable leaned in close to a neighbor's ear. I couldn't hear the words, but I knew the story would spread faster than any legal document. The police lights were a signal to the entire neighborhood that something was wrong in my family. And wrong is always the heaviest word in the language of a small community. I closed the door, thinking I would finally have some peace. But the quiet only lasted until the next day. That afternoon, the doorbell rang. On the Ring camera, I saw a young woman in a long coat holding a clipboard. When I opened the door, she offered a practiced, gentle smile, her voice soft but firm. Aging Services, Case ID, WS 1183. We're here to conduct a wellness check, just to make sure you're doing all right, Mr. Collins. I wasn't surprised. I'd been expecting it. Jake and Madison wouldn't give up so easily. They would just change tactics, painting me as a confused old man in need of a guardian. But I had prepared for that too. I invited her into the living room. On the coffee table, I had everything laid out. Bank's estimate new ACT number RNR002, a clear printout of my recent financials, home photos checklist, showing each room with its new logs and cameras noted, and health check letter number HC77, the doctor's signature still fresh in dark blue ink. My lawyer, Harper, sat in the armchair opposite me, hands folded, simply observing. The social worker reviewed each document, making notes on her form. Her eyes scanned the room. It was clean, organized, the books on the shelves, all in a row. I saw her give a slight, almost imperceptible nod, as if confirming something to herself. Are you having any difficulty managing your finances or daily activities? She asked. I answered, slowly and clearly. I still pay my own bills, do my own grocery shopping, and, as you can see, I keep better records than most young people. Harper allowed himself a small smile. The social worker made a few more notes. I see no indicators of endangerment. You are well within your rights. I'll be closing the file. Her words were like a low, steady note that dissolved the tension in my chest. I thanked her. As the door closed, Harper put a hand on my shoulder. One solid step, he said quietly. That evening, I sat on the porch with a hot cup of tea. The new floodlight illuminated the driveway, and the ring chimed softly whenever a car drove by. The neighborhood kids were still out, laughing and riding their bikes. Everything looked normal, almost peaceful. In that moment, I felt like I had regained my balance. I had faced the police, I had faced social services, and I was still myself a citizen with clear paperwork and a sound mind. But in life, peace rarely lasts. The next morning, as I went to get the newspaper, I heard the heavy thud of a large envelope hitting the bottom of the mailbox. The metal door clanged shut, a harsh, final sound like the tolling of a bell. I pulled it out, a thick, stiff envelope with a court seal in the upper corner. I opened it and read the first line. Court notice number cap 312, petition for guardianship, filed by Jake and Madison Collins. I stood frozen on the brick walkway, the cool morning breeze cutting across the back of my neck. The paper trembled in my hands. It turned out that all of it, the new logs, the bright cameras, the restraining order, the closed wellness file had just been the first line of defense. The true battlefield was no longer in my home. It had moved to the courthouse. The wooden bench was hard. The fluorescent lights were a clinical, chilling white. The air smelled of acrid floor cleaner. I sat still, my hands clasped together, the file for case cap 312 resting against my chest. It was just a single folder, but it was the entire battle. Jake sat across from me, his tie crooked, his eyes avoiding mine. Madison sat ramrod straight, her hair in a tight bun, a pristine white tissue in her hand, ready to cry on cue. I looked at them both, my son, my daughter-in-law, but today, they were the petitioners. Their lawyer stood. His voice was low and calm, full of familiar keywords: cognitive decline, isolation, manipulation. He spoke as if reading from a script. An elderly father, no longer of sound mind, vulnerable to exploitation, in need of guardianship. Every word he uttered was another brick in the wall he was building, a wall meant to portray a confused old man. I swallowed hard and remained silent. The first witness, Mr. Davis, a neighbor I had only ever shared nods with in the yard. He testified that I was installing cameras, changing locks, mowing the lawn at odd hours. My lawyer, Harper, rose. She gave a small, sharp smile. Mr. Davis, did you ever speak directly to Mr. Collins about any of this? He stammered. No. So your entire assessment is based on looking through your curtains? A low chuckle rippled through the courtroom. Mr. Davis's face turned red. He had walked right into the trap. Next, a young pharmacist. Madison had guided him in signing an affidavit at farm number 09. It stated no long-term prescriptions on file. Their lawyer quickly declared, Mr. Collins is off his medication. Harper stepped forward, holding a document. You confirmed Mr. Collins has no long-term prescriptions. Are you confirming that he is off his medication? The pharmacist replied, No. Madison's face tightened. The tissue crumpled in her hand. The trap had sprung again. Jake took the stand. His voice trembled with a practiced sorrow. My father has changed. He used to be warm. Now he's cold. He's cut us out of his life. Someone is manipulating him. I sat motionless. Harper approached, her question quick and sharp. When was the last time you called your father without asking for money? Jake's mouth opened. He hesitated. I don't remember, Harper pressed. You don't remember, or it never happened. Silence, not a sound. The silence stretched on for so long, you could hear the court reporter's pen tapping a rhythm. Harper projected a screen, ledger, XLSX. 3 years, 36 months. The number was stark. $34,780. Bank transfers. Zelle. Checks. Have you paid back a single dollar? Jake hung his head. No answer. Madison bit her lip and turned to the judge. It didn't work. Then it was Madison's turn. She dabbed her eyes with the tissue, her voice quivering, a tear rolling down her cheek at the perfect moment. We're worried about him. We just want the right to help. Harper didn't let up. You once said it will all be ours one day anyway. Do you deny saying that? Madison froze. Her eyes darted around the room. Her mouth opened, then closed. She said nothing. The courtroom was silent. Her silence was the answer. My witnesses came next. Dr. Moore, a cognitive specialist. He presented expert RPT number DX51. The report was concise. My scores were above the baseline. No signs of cognitive decline. His voice was steady, unadorned, but every word was a foundation stone. Then, Mr. Summer and Ethan presented locksmith Infachon 142 and CCTV install RPT number C57. They explained the new locks and cameras were installed after home intrusion, a reasonable action. From the VFW, an old army buddy stood up. Frank still comes to the meetings, remembers the dates, the times, everyone's name. Nothing wrong with his memory. Someone from my church confirmed it. I read scripture, led a small group, never made a mistake. No one needed a script. They just had the truth. Harper began her cross-examination. It was fast, sharp. Few questions, but each one hit its mark. Jake, what was the total amount you received over 36 months? He was forced to read the number aloud. $34,780. Did you ever call your father without asking for money? Silence. Again, the silence confessed for him. Harper turned to me. Mr. Collins, do you have anything you wish to say to the court? I stood. The entire courtroom looked at me. My voice was slow and clear. For years, I paid, thinking I was buying peace. But it was just a false kind of love. I stopped paying to hold on to the truth. This is my house. This are my papers. This is my mind. 3 sentences, short, heavy as lead. Judge Miller looked over the file. He didn't say much. He read DX51, flipped through RNRA through H, and paused. Then he looked up. His voice was decisive. The court denies the petition for guardianship. Cap 312. Mr. Collins is of sound mind. The petitioners have a clear financial motive. A minute order, MO312V, is to be entered. This matter is concluded. The gavel came down 3 times, clean, sharp, final. The courtroom breathed out. Jake slumped in his chair. Madison looked up, her eyes cold. Her glare was a blade. It held no words, but it made a promise. The next battle wouldn't be fought in a courtroom. It would be fought out there, in the court of public opinion, in the currency of reputation. I walked out of the courtroom, the file in my hand. MO312V was light, but to me, it felt as strong as a steel wall. Harper touched my shoulder lightly. The law has done its part. The rest will handle it. Outside, the American flag snapped in the wind. The sunlight was as bright and cold as steel. My phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Gable. People are talking. Let them. I gave a wry smile. Justice in the courthouse was done, but Madison's glare had set a new conflict in motion. Social justice. The final battle. It was still waiting for me. I'm guessing 99% of you hearing this will just sigh and scroll on without hitting like or subscribe. It only takes a second. What time is it where you are, and where are you listening from? The morning after the trial, I sat on the porch with a cup of coffee. The sunlight warmed my hands, and the faint scent of pine drifted from the new fence. On the Ring camera, the small red light still blinked steadily. It was a tiny point of light, but it was enough to remind me. The boundary held. For the first time in months, there were no Venmo requests. No unexpected knocks on the door, no shadows lingering behind the curtains. I exhaled, a long, slow breath. The trial was over, but I knew there was another battle to be fought, the battle for reputation. And it was a battle I would fight in silence. I opened my laptop. The blue glow of the screen reflected a face that was tired, but clear. I composed a new email. No signature, no greeting. The recipient, the PTA president. Attached was the expense PDF file I'd archived from past money transfers. The spa receipts labeled fundraiser supplies. The cocktail dress listed as an event outfit. I remembered Madison's smirk when she called it creative accounting. I typed just 4 words, for your records. Then I hit send. I didn't need to say another word. The news spread faster than I could have imagined. The following week, in the school parking lot, the mothers whispered after dropping off their kids. They were no longer talking about the cookies Madison brought to the bake sale. They were talking about fundraiser money, and their glances were sharper than knives. I wasn't there, but the gossip found its way to my porch like the wind. One email, one PDF. Her kingdom of reputation had shattered like glass. The next day, I sent a second email, this time to the Chamber of Commerce and the HOA board. The subject line, correction. Attached was a copy of the loan application Jake had dragged me into co-signing. I still had the loan notice proof, the confirmation that I had withdrawn my signature. Not a single word of explanation. Just the document. Just the truth. The fallout reached me through Mrs. Gable. An HOA board member had said it plainly during a meeting. Jake isn't quite the self-made man he claims to be. I didn't need to be there to picture it, and I knew that at the summer barbecue, no one would be asking Jake to give his self-made man speech again. People will be looking down at their shoes, their forks scraping softly against their plates. A reputation doesn't need a courtroom to be judged. It cracks silently, and the damage is irreparable. I began to dismantle the big, empty house. I went through the process of selling it. The file number, escrow close number, ESC 5527 printed on the paperwork. I felt no regret. I signed the lease for a small apartment near downtown, lease number APT 44B. It didn't have the look of an inheritance like the old house, but every white wall was a clean page. It was a place where I could live without waiting for the next text asking for money. In the new apartment, I hung a calendar on the fridge. The empty squares quickly filled up. Woodworking on Tuesdays, kayaking on Saturday mornings, volunteering at the library, my registration number VOL-R08. Not a single square was marked transfer. Not a single line item for a Venmo request. One afternoon, I went to the cemetery with a bouquet of wildflowers. Sitting by my wife's grave, I touched the cool stone. I've stopped paying for that false kind of love, I whispered. The legacy I built was honor. Now they can live in what they chose. The grass swayed in the wind, and I believed she heard me. The rumors continued to do their work. Madison was seen less often. Jake grew quieter. I didn't need to say a single harsh word. I didn't need to call and gloat. The community's eyes had seen. They wouldn't forget. Mrs. Gable stopped by my new porch and left a warm apple pie on the small table. Everyone sees it now, she said softly. You don't have to explain a thing. I nodded. The pie was sweet but not cloying, like a social verdict wrapped in a soft pastry crust. I learned to live more slowly. In the mornings, I drank tea, read the paper, and watched people walk their dogs. In the afternoons, I sand a piece of wood smooth, feeling the scent of pine fill the small workshop. In the evenings, I look at the schedule for my shifts at the library and see my name on the volunteer list. Everything was clear, simple, and transparent. I kept the Ring camera active, not out of fear, but because boundaries need to be maintained. A small, blinking red light by the door, like a comma in a sentence. My story with them may have ended, but my own was still being written. I didn't need a noisy revenge. I simply sent the truth. I let the community read it for themselves, and I chose to live the rest of my life in silence. But it was a disciplined, peaceful silence. The legacy I built was honor. Live in what you chose. The door was closed, not out of anger, but for a deep and lasting peace.